Facelift by Alice in Chains was a record that changed a lot for me. This was a big toss up because Dirt, their second record, was just wonderfully written. Production of it, it just shined. It was such a great record. There's so many great songs on it. But for Facelift, for me, that came out of the blue. Heard I think the song "Man in the Box" on it was Much Music, Power 30 or Power Hour they were calling it at the time. At that time, it's been a lot of like thrash and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, Man in the Box came in. I'm like, what a cool tune, right? And what really grasped me about that tune was I obviously love the guitar playing. I was well into playing guitar at this point. I think I was 15 years old, so playing guitar for 4 years, and just a really unique style. I'm going to go back to that feeling, that right hand, and that's what Jerry Cantrell is to me. That's what he's really got more so than the flash of the left. He's just like his picking and that right hand. There's such a feeling and an aura around it, and supporting his writing style. But that record came out. I went and got the cassette, listened to it like crazy. And I remember I was in my high school band. We were playing more stuff, the Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue, Skid Row, writing our own tunes, which are in that kind of genre. And the singer of the band came over. We were just hanging out one day, and we were listening. I was just listening to that record. We were going to rehearse, and I was like, you got to take half an hour. We're going to be late. You got to sit and listen to this record, because I feel like this record's going to change the whole landscape of what is popular and what we're listening to now. And it really was a quintessential album for opening that door to all that stuff, because you got to think of that record came in a little bit before kind of like the sound
Nevermind from Nirvana.
Yeah, it was. And I think Louder Than Love, I think it was Soundgarden, but I had no idea. I didn't know who Pearl Jam was, Nirvana, Soundgarden, any of those bands. It was just all about that record. So that tune in particular, but the whole record, there's such a cool, unique writing style on that record. The guitar playing I love, and you can't deny the vocal styling of Wayne Staley and with Jerry Cantrell. And going back to what Steve Koba from Clog Nova, the singer, he named them the Evil Beatles, basically back then, right? And that's exactly, I think that's a perfect way to describe Alice in Chains, because the way that Lane and Jerry worked together vocally, it's just singing more in fourths, where Beatles are like fifths and thirds, and somewhat more of the happier sound. They do those fourth and all that, and those minor intervals and those harmonies, and it was such a spooky, cool sound, but just big rock and roll fun band at the same time too. On that record, they got a little darker on Dirt, but it's like that Facelift kind of bridged that gap between the 80s fun stuff and that more darker, broody, haunty kind of sound that really came in the 80s, and within the Tool and Soundgarden and so forth. So definitely that album that changed my writing style and a trajectory of, made me want to actually sing. I didn't care about being a singer in a band, but until that band came around and started learning those songs and mimicking Jerry's parts, because he was a new guitar hero for me. I was 15 years old, right? And so that started me on, that really pushed me into starting to write music. So up till that point, we'd write tunes and everything, but there was no substance or anything to them. We were just kind of mimicking, trying to be a little bit different from the bands that we were just listening to, like the Skid Row and Guns N' Roses and all that, trying to be enough different that we could call it original, but they weren't. They were just rip-off tunes. But up until that point, and then, putting all that stuff together, it's like, and I started writing, it's like, hey, I'm developing, like I said, with my guitar playing style being a little bit bluesy, but a bit progressive and a little bit shreddy. But the 80s rock thing with aggressive and a little bit of metal, but then this kind of eerie interval thing, I started developing a sound for writing. And then the bands that I did kind of after that were within that kind of realm. So that album really shaped what I was doing for sure.
Yeah, to me, the signature sound with Alice in Chains is the Jerry Cantrell guitar sound, which is very unique. And also the harmonies, the backup vocals, like you mentioned. So you have bands that influence Alice in Chains, but then you have bands that were influenced by Alice in Chains. So I always mention that, I was 16 when Stain Break the Cycle came out. That was a big one for me. And Alice in Chains is one of Stain's favorite bands, and you can hear on some Stain albums it sounds like Alice in Chains because they're doing that weird dark harmony that you don't hear very often.
Yeah, absolutely. They, like said, as much as important Guns N' Roses were to a little shift in that, in that scene, that I feel Alice in Chains and bands like Soundgarden, of course, like and the like were as well. But for me personally, I think Alice in Chains is like just they just opened the door. They're one of my favorite bands of all time. Love Jerry Cantrell to death, and he's just cool dude that writes great songs, great player, amazing songwriter, yeah, super cool band, and that record changed a lot for sure.
So people think of grunge, they think of Nirvana's Nevermind. That's like the poster child of the grunge movement. And this actually, you mentioned, this actually predates it by a bit. And this album actually achieved some accomplishments before Nevermind did. So Facelift became the first album from the grunge movement to chart in the top 50. So it's the first like hit in the grunge movement. It's the first album in the grunge movement to go gold. So it went gold. And so that was September, and it was November when Nirvana's Nevermind either came out or went gold. So they were just Nirvana. It's like it opened the door to that sound. Like people started to embrace it, and they were ready by the time Nevermind came around.
Absolutely. It's funny. I've had this argument with people that just like, and you can tell, like, I don't even know why I continue the argument sometimes, but everybody thinks it's like Nirvana was that band that really opened that door, and they weren't, right? It's just, maybe they got some more radio play, and so you get on listening to it a little bit later, but it was Alice in Chains that I felt like opened that door. Not that I felt, they just did. What an important band, those first two records. And I love all the records. The later stuff now, with Black Gives Way to Blue, and and all that with William Duvall, on lead vocals and stuff. Amazing record still. But like
it actually sounds like surprisingly like Alice in Chains.
That's it. He's doing it's Jerry, because Jerry is so much of the Alice in Chains sound. Not taking anything away from Lane, because I love Lane to death. God bless his soul. It's just such a huge talent. His tone and the emotion that he put into his vocal, second to none, and is hugely just as important to Alice in Chains as Jerry was. But it's just Jerry was such a voice, not just a writing, but actual real voice, that it's just like it lets the fans still hear the fundamental sound of that Alice in Chains in that in their albums now, and it's still great. Still love them to death. One of my favorite bands ever.
So the most known song is Man in the Box, which was the second single. So the first single is We Die Young. And just like we mentioned, Guns N' Roses, it took a year for Appetite for Destruction to take off. This album has the first single, We Die Young. And in the first 6 months, it only sold 40,000 copies. And then Man in the Box, as the second single, gets added to MTV rotation. And what took 6 months to sell 40,000 copies, within 6 weeks of that, sold 400,000 copies, to show how big the power of MTV and the music video and the right single, because Man in the Box is like an undeniable hit. It's also Nothing Sounds Like It. So it's like a signature song that kind of has its own stamp on radio.
Absolutely. 100%. That's like that chorus. It's funny how simple that chorus is, and with the dual vocal and the harmony, because it's E, G, D, and A. Like it's like campfire chords personified, right? Easiest tune, but that's the thing that just grabbed people. And it's that riff too, like that. So it's that clunky, like that jong, jong, jong. And the thing, it's technically, yeah, it's out of tune, right? Basically those notes don't really work together very well, right? Because it's D, it's a high D over low E, right? And you hit those two together, and it's like, it's not a very cool sound, right? You'd think, but just the way he played and a little bit of wah filter on it, and it just made this new cool grungy sound, right? There's no better way to describe it, right? So yeah, and that's the thing, just sent them off into the stratosphere, and yeah, well deserved, because they're just a wonderful rock band. Yeah, one of my favorites.
So I have a few things as we keep tying all 5 albums together. A few things here. Ozzy Osbourne listed Facelift as one of his 10 favorite metal albums. So I need Ozzy to go all the way through all 5 albums. So there you go.
It's top 10, eh? Oh, wow. It's good. Well, there you go. I actually never knew that in picking that, but no doubt, yeah, when you listen to that record all the way through, it's so diverse. It's crazy how diverse it is. It's like there's tunes that are kind of that 80 poppy, high riffy thing,
there's like a Red Hot Chili Peppers sounding song near the end of the album. There's like a clean clink, clink, clink.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's like stuff that's just, super dark, right? And then you get love, hate, love, right? Where it's just this, it's just all drawn out and it's like super emotional, and like it's really, really diverse record. Yeah.
And you had mentioned earlier about something about Bon Jovi. So that guitar sound for Man in the Box was actually inspired by them hearing Bon Jovi living on a prayer. They heard that on the radio with that wah sound, and that inspired it. So again, tying back, things over your life that all work together here.
Oh, right. Yeah. So yeah, they didn't use the talk box that Richie Sambora would use, but it just used the back end of a wah-wah pedal and just filtered. It didn't go up to the top to get that real like Jimi Hendrixy like crang out of it. It was just a little bit of filter on that low, and it just gave it that tone, which is super unique, right? And it's still a staple to you hear that, it's Jerry Cantrell right away.
I guess a few more things. We were talking about Nirvana's popularity and their popularity. So Man in the Box is the second most played mainstream rock song in the decade of 2010 to 2020. The second most played, obviously, after Smells Like Teen Spirit. So just to show the two of them, the 2 most played songs, period, for that decade.
Crazy, eh? Well, there you go. That's why, that's why they're being listed, I guess, right?
Yeah. Two more things. So the drummer, Sean Kinney, apparently he played with a broken wrist. So he had brought in someone else because it's like there's they had created a buzz. I guess they had an EP before that was creating a buzz, and there was a deadline and there's a lot of money involved. They were a top priority for the label, and they had to go in and record. And he had a broken hand, and he's in a cast. And they brought in a different drummer, and he was like showing them what to play. And then I guess he had this feeling that this was going to be a big album. And he's like, I can't miss out on this. And he takes off his cast, and he got a bucket of ice, and he did the whole album with a broken hand just to be a part of it.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. It's too funny, eh? It's just like, I remember it was like, said the guy did a couple of takes, and it was just like, this ain't going to work. It wasn't just about that he didn't want like he wanted to be on the record. It's just like it just wasn't the right feel either, right? So I remember hearing about that. Thanks for reminding me. I have to dig that story back up too. But it's crazy is all these little stories that you've kind of reiterated. It's like these little tiny small decisions and how important they have become for all those records in the grand scheme of things in history, right? So it goes to show how every little moment counts, right?
Yeah, I guess the last thing I would say about this album is, it's sad, like the history of rock and roll and metal, like the drugs and the alcohol, and you have Randy Rhoads in the plane that passes away, and Lane is it Staley? I always think Stanley, Lane Staley. Him, it was heroin that did him in. And one thing that was just shocking to me is, so he was 6 feet, and when they found him, he was 86 pounds.
Yeah,
which is like it's just like a skeleton. Like it's so sad, like the talent of someone like they're in their 20s and sold millions of albums and a world-class talent, and drugs just they get the claws in and don't let go, and it's just heartbreaking,
And it's unfortunate. We've seen the story unfold time and time again, right? And it probably will still keep happening, unfortunately, right? But it's just unfortunate that, some people, I think it's just in your DNA. I think it's, and you get into that, and, it's like some people can drink casually and some people just can't. Right. And, if, some people just got to stop fully or just go fully, and it's really unfortunate. We've lost a lot of, great, musicians and just, actors and just, anybody, a lot of great people on this planet just, due to unfortunately getting, into that world and not being able to get themselves out. Right. And it's a shame that, that it exists, but it's just, it happens, and it's always unfortunate.
Yeah, we hope that we learn from our mistakes moving forward. It's the music industry it's an industry where it's easy to do drugs and it's easy to drink, and a lot of it is free and unlimited, and you're cooler if you party and do drugs, and the best thing you can do for your career sales wise is die, and your biography is better if you went through the struggles and the drugs and the addictions. And it's sad that it's we set these people up for that failure kind of thing.
Yeah, it is a sad reality, just because it's the thing. It's just the money's there, and it's just like it's all about the party, and, I don't think it's as bad as it used to be. Well, maybe just, it seems like that on the surface, right? Because still got, a lot of stars dying from drug overdoses and all that, but, it does seem like that at least there's, it seems like to me that there's a vibe out there where you don't have to, get into that stuff to have a good time, right? Where it's like back in the day, it's just like you couldn't get away from it. Where now it's like it's kind of becoming the uncool thing to, to get into that, and it's a good thing to see, right? So hopefully it's a bit of a shift, but, and who knows, man? It's out there. I don't think it's going to ever fully go away. Although, no matter how much we wish it all would, but, it's, just unfortunate reality that we got to deal with that surrounds us, right?